The rain hammered against the kitchen window as Carl McLean watched his son push food around his plate. Owen had barely touched his dinner, his 9-year-old eyes darting between his father and the empty chair where Linda usually sat during their evening meals. "Dad," Owen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask you something weird?" Carl set down his fork, studying his son's troubled expression. Owen wasn't one to speak without careful thought, a trait he'd inherited from Carl himself. "Anything, buddy. What's on your mind? Why does Mom change clothes in the garage?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Carl felt something cold settle in his chest, but his face remained calm, neutral. Years of negotiating multi-million-dollar deals as a corporate acquisitions consultant had taught him to never show his hand. "What do you mean?" Owen's words tumbled out in a rush. "When she comes home from work, she doesn't come inside right away. She sits in the car. I can see from my bedroom window. She changes her shirt, sometimes her whole outfit. I've watched it happen every day this week. Sometimes," Owen's voice cracked. "Sometimes she cries first, Dad. She just sits there crying in the car. Then she wipes her face, changes clothes, and comes inside smiling like nothing happened." Carl reached across the table and squeezed Owen's hand, even as his mind began calculating, analyzing, cataloging every recent interaction with his wife. "How long have you noticed this?" "A couple months, maybe. I thought it was weird, but I didn't want to say anything. But today she was crying really hard. I got scared." After Owen went to bed that night, Carl sat alone in his study, a glass of bourbon untouched on his desk. Linda had come home an hour ago with her usual bright smile, chattering about her day at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. He'd watched her carefully, not a hair out of place, makeup perfect, but now he couldn't unsee what Owen had described. He pulled up their phone records on his laptop. They shared a family plan, something Linda had insisted on for transparency. Carl had never thought to look before. Trust had been the foundation of their 12-year marriage. Now, as he scrolled through her call log, he saw a pattern emerge. One number appeared repeatedly, often during her lunch break or right after her shift ended. The calls lasted anywhere from 15 minutes to over an hour. Carl's fingers flew across the keyboard. A reverse phone lookup revealed the number belonged to Gordon Mooney. The name meant nothing to Carl, but a deeper search painted a picture. Gordon was a pharmaceutical sales representative who frequently visited hospitals in their area. Married, 2 kids, a social media profile full of family photos and corporate achievement awards. Carl leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. He could confront Linda now, but that would give her time to construct lies, to manipulate the narrative. No, he needed more. He needed to understand the full scope of this betrayal before he made his move. The next morning, Carl kissed Linda goodbye at the door like always. But instead of heading to his downtown office, he circled back and parked 3 blocks away from their house. He waited. At 4:47 p.m., Linda's silver Honda pulled into their driveway. Carl watched through the telephoto lens he'd borrowed from his friend Marty Ferris, a private investigator who owed him a favor. Marty had taught him a few tricks over the years, knowledge Carl never thought he'd need to use on his own wife. Through the lens, he saw everything Owen had described. Linda sat motionless in the driver's seat for several minutes, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs. Then, just as Owen said, she pulled herself together. She reached into a shopping bag in the passenger seat, one Carl had never seen her bring home, and pulled out a different blouse. She changed right there in the garage, stuffing the original shirt back into the bag. Carl's hands trembled slightly as he lowered the camera. The evidence was undeniable now, but he needed to know more about Gordon Mooney. He needed leverage. Over the next week, Carl learned everything. Gordon Mooney wasn't just any sales rep. He was the star performer at Biopharma Solutions, a company Carl's firm had actually considered acquiring last year. Gordon's territory included 7 major hospitals, and his commission structure was public knowledge among industry insiders. He pulled in over $300,000 annually, sustaining an expensive lifestyle in the suburbs with his wife, Anna, and their 2 young daughters. But Gordon had secrets beyond the affair. Carl discovered through a contact at Biopharma that Gordon had been falsifying sales reports, inflating his numbers by crediting himself for orders that had been placed through other representatives. It was subtle enough to avoid immediate detection, but substantial enough to constitute fraud. Gordon was essentially stealing commissions from his colleagues while maintaining his golden boy image. Carl sat in a coffee shop across from Biopharma's headquarters, watching Gordon emerge from the building. He was tall, polished, the kind of man who smiled easily and wore expensive suits. Carl felt nothing but contempt. This was the man who'd been with his wife, who'd made her cry in their garage, who'd turned their family into a lie. That evening, Carl finally made his move. He called Bernard Swanson, the CEO of Biopharma Solutions. Bernard and Carl had developed a professional friendship during the acquisition talks, even though the deal had ultimately fallen through. Bernard, it's Carl McLean. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Carl, always good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I'm actually calling with some information you might find valuable. It concerns one of your sales representatives, Gordon Mooney. I've uncovered evidence of significant commission fraud that could expose your company to serious liability. The conversation lasted 30 minutes. Carl laid out everything he'd discovered, offering to share his documentation. Bernard's voice grew colder with each revelation. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Carl. This is exactly the kind of integrity issue we cannot tolerate. I'll need to verify everything, of course, but if what you're saying is accurate, there will be immediate consequences. I understand completely. I'll send over the files tonight. Bernard, there's one more thing. Gordon's been having an affair with my wife. I wanted you to know that my motivation here is personal, but the fraud is real regardless of my circumstances. I wouldn't waste your time otherwise. There was a pause. I'm sorry to hear about your situation, Carl. But business is business. If he's been stealing from this company, he's done. Carl didn't confront Linda yet. Instead, he set up a meeting with Gordon directly. He sent a text from a burner phone, pretending to be a potential client interested in Biopharma's products. Gordon, ever eager for a commission, agreed to meet at a bar downtown. Carl arrived early, choosing a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. When Gordon walked in, confident and unsuspecting, Carl raised his hand in greeting. The confusion on Gordon's face when he reached the table was almost satisfying. Mr. Mooney, thanks for coming. I'm Carl McLean. The color drained from Gordon's face. I didn't know. Sit down. Carl's voice was quiet but carried an edge of steel. Gordon sat. I'm not here to make a scene, Carl continued. I'm here to inform you that your employment with Biopharma Solutions will be terminated tomorrow morning. You've been falsifying sales reports for 8 months. Your CEO has all the documentation he needs. They're also considering criminal charges for fraud. Gordon's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How did you? I'm very good at my job, Gordon. I investigate companies for a living. Finding dirt on individuals is child's play. Carl leaned forward. But here's the thing. Your wife, Anna, doesn't know about the fraud yet. And she doesn't know about your affair with my wife. I imagine that knowledge would complicate your already difficult situation. Please, Gordon's voice cracked. My kids, your kids. Carl's laugh was bitter. I have a 9-year-old son who's been watching his mother cry in our garage every day. Don't talk to me about kids. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You're going to lose your job. Your reputation in the industry is going to be destroyed. And when Anna finds out about everything, you'll likely lose your family too. I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm simply telling you that your life, as you knew it, is over. Carl stood up. One more thing. If you ever contact Linda again, if you ever even think about her, I will make sure every detail of your fraud and your affair becomes public knowledge. I'll send the information to your country club, your kids' school, every professional contact you have. Do we understand each other? Gordon nodded, his face ashen. That night, Carl finally confronted Linda. He waited until Owen was asleep, then placed a folder on the kitchen table between them. Inside were call records, photos, everything. I know about Gordon Mooney, he said simply. Linda's face crumpled. The mask she'd been wearing for months finally fell away. Carl, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. Don't. His voice cut through her words. Don't insult me with cliches. Owen saw you crying in the garage. Our son has been watching you fall apart every day while you pretended everything was fine. Linda's sobs filled the kitchen, but Carl felt nothing. The woman before him was a stranger. It started 6 months ago, she finally said. He was charming, attentive. I felt invisible here, like I was just a mother and a wife, but not a person. It was stupid. It was selfish. It's over now. It's been over for weeks. I ended it. but I couldn't figure out how to tell you. You're right about one thing, Carl said. It is over. Gordon's losing his job tomorrow. His wife will know about the affair soon, and you and I are done. No, please, Carl. We can fix this. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. What I need is a partner I can trust. You're not that person anymore. Carl stood. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. You'll be served papers next week. I'm willing to keep this civil for Owen's sake, but I want primary custody. You can have weekends. You can't take my son from me. I'm not taking him from you. I'm protecting him from the chaos you've created. The judge will see the evidence. Linda, they'll see that you've been unstable, that Owen's been affected by your behavior. I've documented everything. Linda collapsed into a chair, her world disintegrating around her. Carl felt a grim satisfaction watching the reality hit her, but also a deep sadness for what they'd lost. 3 months later, Carl sat in his lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. The settlement had been relatively straightforward. Linda hadn't fought for primary custody once she'd seen Carl's evidence and heard that Owen himself had expressed a preference to stay with his father. She'd get the weekends, holidays would be split, and Carl had been fair with the financial arrangements despite everything. Gordon Mooney's life had imploded exactly as Carl had predicted. Biopharma had fired him and pursued charges for fraud. The case had been settled out of court, but Gordon had been forced to return over $80,000 in ill-gotten commissions and had been blacklisted from the pharmaceutical industry. Anna had filed for divorce within days of learning about the affair. Gordon's LinkedIn profile showed he was now working as a used car salesman 2 states away. Carl's lawyer, Brett Newton, slid the signed documents into a folder. This is it. You're officially a free man. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, Carl admitted. It was true. The initial pain had been sharp, but knowing he'd handled everything on his own terms had made the recovery easier. He hadn't been a victim. He'd been strategic, methodical, in control. That evening, Carl picked up Owen from school. His son had been seeing a therapist, working through his feelings about the divorce, and seemed to be adjusting well. They developed a stronger bond through the ordeal, spending more time together, being more honest with each other. Dad, Owen said as they drove home, can I ask you something? Always. Are you sad about Mom? Carl thought about the question carefully. I'm sad about what could have been. I'm sad that our family changed. But I'm not sad about the choices I made. Sometimes you have to protect yourself and the people you love, even when it's hard. Owen nodded, processing this. You're really brave, Dad. Carl smiled, ruffling his son's hair. We both are, buddy. As they pulled into the driveway, Carl felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The garage door opened to reveal empty space where Linda's car used to park. It was a physical reminder of the change, but also of the honesty that now filled their home. He'd been betrayed, but he hadn't been broken. He'd taken control, set things right on his terms, and emerged stronger. Gordon Mooney had lost everything through his own greed and deception. Linda would have to rebuild her life and live with her choices. But Carl and Owen, they were going to be just fine. That night, after Owen was asleep, Carl stood in his study looking at the city lights through the window. His phone buzzed with a text from Marty Ferris. Heard everything worked out. Drinks this weekend. Carl smiled and typed back. Sounds good. I'm buying. He set the phone down and poured himself a bourbon, this time actually taking a sip. The future was uncertain, but it was his to shape, and that made all the difference.